Welcome back. We're still keeping our focus on what is going on and how do we sort all of this. What do people think? Well, we've got Professor Sylvester Odion joining us. He's of the Department of Political Science, Lagos State University. Good morning, Prof, and thank you for joining us today. Well, clearly, nobody wants this kind of scenario, and the response across board first, the response from Nigerian government, start with that. What's your impression of how we are approaching this matter?
Well, the options are, clearly limited. But I think that what the Nigerian government has done so far is sending an envoy to South Africa to meet with the leadership. Of course, boycotting the forthcoming World Economic Forum that is holding in South Africa. These are, symbolic diplomatic actions to express the anger of the Nigerian government and the Nigerian people, to the people of South Africa and their government. So they are in order. And also the desire to evacuate Nigerians who want to come back to the country is also in order.
What is this that a number of people
have also argued, especially those in South Africa and Nigerians at home, is that, look, the Nigerians, in Nigeria, leave Nigeria to go to places like South Africa because of, for one, greener pasture, adventure or another. Now a number of people are even calling them to come back home. That's position of government now to airlift Nigerians back to South Africa. What's your reaction to that?
I think you clearly raised a very important question. That is the failure of leadership, both in Nigeria and in South Africa. Nigerian government has not lived up to the expectation of Nigerians. And many of us, if you have traveled around the world, you don't need to leave this country if we have governments that can unleash the economic potentials of this country. So Nigerians are leaving the country because they don't have, hope. The government is not living up to expectation. They are not providing jobs. What you have on a daily basis is accumulation of, resources of the country by few individuals who are in government. But having said that, the leadership failure in South Africa is also that if you understand the historical problem besetting South Africa, apartheid was absolute and total. And the people of South Africa were, deprived outright. And so the government has not been able to resolve it since Mandela. When Mandela was in power, Mandela tried to redress the housing question. Most South Africans live in bachelor houses, house made with zinc. Mandela tried to resolve it by putting one of his own trusted colleagues, Joe Slovo, to address the housing question in South Africa. But subsequent leadership in South Africa has not addressed that. And as we all know, the economic resources of South Africa is in the hand of the white minority. And that is what you get when you have the apartheid transition. So what is the Zimbabweans what they try to do in Zimbabwe by expropriation, of land, for Zimbabweans who happen in South Africa. And if that does not happen, there's no way they will redress the economic problem, in South Africa. And again, the Nigerians who go to South Africa, what do they do? As far back as 98, when Nigeria was under the rule of, General Sani Abacha, we had an opportunity to visit Johannesburg and Cape Town. Many Nigerians were selling second-hand clothes in the streets of Joburg. Others were selling meat, porky meat in Cape Town and all of that. And so Nigerians are not really doing, work that you will say is defined. Those work are things they can do in Nigeria, but they won't do it. And that is because the government has not created the right environment, and the orientation to productivity in our country.
Today is Thursday, and we understand that Nigeria's envoy to South Africa is meant to have meetings with the South African Authority. Now, I'd like us to take a look or a preview of that meeting. What are the issues you expect the envoy to discuss? What should be placed on the table at that meeting today?
Well, I think what is very clear is that if you follow the trend of events in South Africa, the criminal justice system or the security system in South Africa has failed. Because the killing of Nigerians, you could see that there is not even protection from the South African state. And so if there are Nigerians, for instance, who violate their law, the rule of law, should take place. Should take place. And so the South Africans also need to overhaul their criminal justice system. If you go to Saudi Arabia and all those other countries in Southeast Asia, Malaysia and the rest of them, what happened? They have a very strict, legal system that punishes offenders. And so when you are going into those countries, you know what to expect. But in the case of South Africa, Nigerians across board, are being discriminated against. Of course, we all, what we could call concrete response from the South African state in this respect. So Nigeria needs to discuss that. Of course, the immigration system is very important. If you don't have any business in the country, you don't need to go. There's no need to go into another country illegally. But let me even give you an information you may not know. Many Nigerians were going to South Africa as a stopgap, station from where they subsequently migrate into Europe. That was what they were doing in the 1980s. So those who don't have any business in South Africa don't need to go to South Africa. Many Nigerians are studying there. They are teaching in their institutions, and those ones have not been subjected to this kind of, attack that we are seeing now. And so the immigration system needs to be regulated, and that body is largely on the part of the South African government, because they issue visas and also, of course, they man their borders. So that is important thing that I think they need to discuss. But beyond that, the leadership need to educate the South African people on the role played by fellow Africans in the liberation of their country from the apartheid system. And I think that a great deal of ignorance exists among South Africans. Even Nigerians today, apart from rhetoric, they don't really understand the nitty-gritty, of that battle, the role that Nigerians played. Institutions were set up in Nigeria, USAN, Nigeria ANC Friendship Association, the Anti-Apartheid Committee and the rest of them. Nigerians played a great deal of role. And so, with of course, to see the eventual liberation of that country. This needs to go into the South African curriculum so that people will understand that, there is solidarity among Africans to ignite this Pan-Africanist spirit among, Africans. It's very, very important. I think they need to do. So the government needs to be very proactive in terms of providing adequate security, for foreigners in South Africa.
Now, you mentioned education, having this in the curriculum and all. Now, I understand that yesterday, part of the resolutions or recommendations that came out is this exchange program for Nigerian students to travel to South Africa. I think about 20 Nigerian students to travel to South Africa and, interact with other South African young people. And of course, there was some controversy about that. But what do you think about that particular idea?
It's a very good one. But I think that much more important is that we need to document the history, the role of Nigeria in the anti-apartheid, struggle. It's very, very important. We need to have that book. It has to be part of the, reading text, for in the curriculum of both countries.
The Nigerian Association of the National Association of Nigerian Students, the body says they don't exactly like the idea, and they are protesting against this. I'm sure you probably saw some videos that came out and pictures yesterday. So how do we balance that?
Well, I think that the current NAS we have in the country is not the NAS we know in the 80s. They are ideologically very backward. I'm sorry to say that. So the fight of exchange is a very good one. Because what we need to do, we are Africans, we are brothers. So we need to tighten that relationship. And we need to exploit every avenue, that will make that happen. So exchange program is important. And I recall that Professor Gigi Dara, when George Nene was in Nigeria, the then High Commissioner, tried to set up what they call Nigerian-South African dialogue. The first meeting was held, at the Federal Palace Hotel in Lagos, in the mid-90s, or so. No, I mean, I think the early 2000 or so was held in Lagos. And South African intellectuals were brought from South Africa to interact with their Nigerian counterparts. And so that program was truncated. So we need more of those, interaction at various levels, business level, academia, and of course, cultural level.
Just to clear the air, what Nance is saying is that, we are the ones. I mean, at this point, it is Nigerians in South Africa that are being, attacked and what have you. So this negotiation should not be Nigerian students, as it were, going there. They are saying that it should be South Africans coming here to have a feel and, interact with Nigerians. That's what they're saying. And I think that's what, formed the basis of the controversy yesterday. But you think that's still not a good idea?
Well, I think that the Nigerian government has opened up the diplomatic channel. They are meeting with their South African counterparts. So we can't fault that, Of course, subsequently, we might see a Cyril Ramaphosa paying a visit to Nigeria and to allay the fears of Nigerians. That we recognize the role you played in it, during our struggle against apartheid. We are going to do our best to rein in, the xenophobic atmosphere in South Africa against, other Africans. And I think that is the kind of assurance we need from them. And of course, as I said before, they need to also put in place institutional measures to deal, with upsurge of this kind of, killings that we're having or mobilization.
Some of the other issues that is playing out, which also needs to be addressed, is one, the guest who joined us earlier highlighted how he saw South African companies there in South Africa being looted by South Africans, those who were protesting in the guise of getting foreigners out. And back here in Lagos, we also did see images of Nigerians looting shops also belonging to Nigerians. So this does speak to a matter where the unemployment rates, how the kind of information people have, who some say they've got this pent-up anger just looking for where to vent. Is this valid? Is this the way you see it? What should be done about this?
Well, if what happened in South Africa and in Nigeria is expected. Nigeria is at least currently reckoned as the headquarters of poverty globally. And South Africans, as you know very well, in South Africa, the unemployment rate is also very high, and the blacks in South Africa have not been rehabilitated. So you are going to have that kind of, self-help on the part of, the dredge of society. They will definitely loot when there are crisis situations. And we have seen it even in protests in this country in the time, past, how people go into shops to loot and the rest of them. Those are, byproducts of protests. If you like, call it collateral damage. Those things happen. But I think that what security forces should do is to prevent that, is to ensure that properties are not destroyed, lives are not lost when you have a crisis situation, such as we have now.
Do you see this one as an opportunity for us to look inwards, rethink, redesign, or retool the way we invest either in Nigeria or investments of Nigerians outside the country? And do you think that we will actually do something about this?
So I think essentially when you talk about investment, people look at a number of factors. Do you have security in those countries? Do you have the rule of law in those countries? And the rest of those things matter when you want to invest. But I think the real question should be the Nigerian government should, get its act together and ensure that we unleash our economic, potential. That's it. Nigerians, don't really need to go to a country to start looking for jobs. You can have an auto economy in Nigeria when you have the population, so unleash productivity, create the right atmosphere, and provide the infrastructures and facilities for Nigeria to do business and eke out a living within our country.
Some say that, I mean, this has been mentioned over the past 2-3 days that we've been engaging on this conversation, that these issues in South Africa dates back decades. Do you see an end in sight anytime soon? If so, what needs to be done urgently, especially for the Nigerians in South Africa?
Well, it's so far as you have, poverty, unemployment in South Africa. What you call a transfer aggression will always happen. People will take laws into their hands, when they are beaten to the wall. But I feel that, as I said before, the government has a grip to that. Let me tell you a story. In 1994, shortly after Mandela came into power, the then Secretary General of the Communist Party of South Africa told us a story. Blaise the man who became the Minister for Higher Education. He said when apartheid ended, South Africa thought that the economic resources of the whites would be transferred to them. A servant of a boss rearranged the boss's apartment when the man traveled out of the country. And when the man came back, the man meant that the house has been transformed. The flower boards, rearranged, the chairs rearranged, and everything. And the man asked the servant what was happening. The servant told the boss, "Master, I, the boss, you, the servant." That is the impression many South Africans had about the end of apartheid. But today they have not gotten that economic, freedom, economic autonomy. They are still toiling, and finding it difficult to eke out a living. But within that context, there will be occasional, bouts of violence, such that you have seen. But the responsibility rests with the government.
Give us your, as we wind down, the way the authorities, police, security agencies are responding to the protests in Nigeria. What do you think about it?
I think it's extremely barbaric. Nigerians are for the first time expressing anger about they being killed, in South Africa. And I thought that what the Nigerian police should do is to, ensure that the protest does not degenerate into a free-for-all violence. Protect properties that are, that may be targets of hoodlums and all of that. They didn't do that. You see them shooting outright on the people who are protesting. That is not the way to police in the 21st century. We have seen what is going on in Hong Kong for several weeks. The Chinese have the military capacity and everything to clamp down on the people of Hong Kong. The government has not done so, but rather you see efficient policing, and a few arrests, were made in that case. But the Nigerian police, like the colonial police force that it has always been, is centered on the Nigerian people.
All right, Professor Sylvester Odion, Department of Political Science, Lagos State University. We appreciate your talking to us this morning.